Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Eddie Hearn delivered a very interesting interview with Kugan Cassius of IFL TV, going through a number of matters that heavyweight fans have close to their chest at the moment. They want to know what's happening with Dillian Whyte, Anthony Joshua. Will they or won't they give up Wembley? And obviously the issues with Wilder and Fury. Will Joshua ever fight them? So we'll go through some of the key points from the interview and some thoughts along the way. So buckle in. Let's go. So we'll start first with Wembley, because obviously a lot of talk about will Anthony Joshua give up that date and go fight Jarrell Miller later in the year, maybe May or June in America. When he was asked about that, how likely was it to give up the April the 13th date, Eddie Hearn responded 75% no. And if they did give up that date, it's gone for the year. In other words, there would be no more dates available. This is their one shot at the venue in 2019. And I've been saying for a little while now, I can't see them giving up this date, just because if they do, they'll take a PR hit, because going to take a Jarrell Miller fight, giving up that date, it would represent a very bad PR for Anthony Joshua, and it would be effectively admitting the stadium days are gone without a big fight like Wilder or Fury, that you can't fill it with someone else. But also the associated planning, organisation, logistics, the money that would have already been poured into that venue and date, behind the scenes with all the stuff going on, let alone the deposit that they would have paid, they'd take a decent financial hit. Sure, they'd be able to overcome it, but still, they're going to go ahead with that date, 75% chance from what Eddie Hearn is saying. But if we look at the next bit, who is going to be that opponent for Anthony Joshua if he keeps Wembley? The first guy to talk about is Dillian Whyte. We know that's a guy that is in the picture. They've made an offer to Whyte now. Whyte has labelled that utterly ridiculous, the first offer that he had. Eddie Hearn has said there will be an improved offer coming to Whyte for him to consider. He was asked about that. Was it utterly ridiculous? And he said he didn't believe it was, but he didn't think it was a great offer. And we have to remember, this offer isn't coming from Eddie Hearn per se, it's from Anthony Joshua. Think about Eddie Hearn in this situation where it's an in-house fight, he promotes both guys. He's kind of like a real estate agent, he's representing the interests of both. I mean, where his loyalties lie, one greater than the other, we can certainly debate about that. But this offer, he said, it didn't believe it was a great offer, but it was an offer to fight for the world heavyweight title, as he put it, for several millions. But he did say that Dillian Whyte has built the right to have a big package. But if he wants to have another fight in the division, he will support that. So not sort of locking Dillian Whyte in by any stretch of the imagination, because obviously the second offer hasn't gone to him, and who knows what Whyte will do. But Whyte does have a little bit of leverage here, because Anthony Joshua, for this Wembley date, if they're keeping it, he's starting to, run out of runway for negotiations, because they'll have to enter camp, they'll have to announce the opponent. Otherwise, maybe that 25% of not taking the date, potentially they'll have to pull the trigger and go, we're going to have to go elsewhere. But Dillian Whyte and his representatives will know that they've got a little bit more leverage here than they potentially did have before Christmas, because they can try squeeze for a bit more. But ultimately, if he doesn't like the deal, if he thinks he is being lowballed even for the second offer or whatever any further revised offers are, he can always move on, and he doesn't have to fight for the heavyweight title. And that's some of what Eddie Hearn talked about in this interview, not just in regards to Whyte, but also Fury and Wilder. You've got the opportunity here to face the unified champion who's got 3 belts, and that is worth something. That's a part of the negotiations that Anthony Joshua is the commercial A side. He's earned that position, and it's not going to be an equal share, but if you do want to fight for it, take a bit less, and you can actually have the shot at the world title. You can become the A side, you can become the big dog in the division. So we'll have to wait with, bated breath to see what happens with Dillian Whyte, because the other offers that are out there for Fury and Wilder, it's unlikely to happen. Fury and Wilder have said as much. They're negotiating on a rematch with each other right now. But Hearn did say he has still been in contact with both. He's sent 6 emails to Shelley Finkel in total, none of which have been responded to. And he did allude in respect of Tyson Fury, some form of offer or something has been presented to Tyson Fury. but he wouldn't elaborate in any detail at all. But that was the clear sort of what he was hinting at to Kugan Cassius, who pressed him on it, but he wouldn't reveal what exactly the discussions were, what had been presented to Tyson Fury. Although it must be said, Frank Warren, Fury's promoter, in his most recent interview, also with Kugan Cassius, he denied any contact has been made directly with him. So we don't know what's happening with Fury. I mean, Hearn had said he'd been in text conversations. This was before Christmas with Fury. But Warren was very categorical. If any deal was to be set up or negotiated, the offer must flow through him. So if they are to get any ball rolling, it's got to start with him. And that hasn't happened, according to Warren. So the talk of Tyson Fury, I think it is just that at the moment. But Hearn, he was asked, well, how far off 50-50 for Wilder and Fury are you? And he responded, not particularly far off on an equal split for both Fury and Wilder. And then asked, well, what about 60-40? And he was told, Kugan Cassius was told, you're not a million miles away. So who knows what the actual percentage split is? Not a million miles. Does that mean it's over or under 60-40? Who knows? But apparently, from what Hearn is saying, improved offers, percentage offers, has gone to Deontay Wilder, and who knows what's gone to Tyson Fury. But he did say that Joshua and Fury are levels above Deontay Wilder, that Fury's got a bit more about him, and hopefully Wilder or Fury will give the people the fight that they want to see. And that is obviously Hearn's perspective. Many people, including myself, do want to see the Wilder and Fury rematch. But I have to say it was quite interesting because Eddie Hearn, clearly not happy that a lot of people are starting to talk about Joshua not wanting these fights, that greed is overtaking the situation. But Hearn basically said some people have been brainwashed the other way, that Joshua wants these fights, he's the one presenting the offers, but people have to have an asterisk next to their name because when they say they want to fight Anthony Joshua, they want to fight for ridiculous money. And he went on quite a bit of a rant here, defending Anthony Joshua, his position, and the position that he's sort of built up in the division as the number one guy, and said if people want to say they're the number one guy, they have to beat the number one guy, and they're not going to get an equal split. It was all quite interesting because the narrative has been taking hold recently, and you've started to, no doubt yourselves, see some videos surfacing on YouTube and other suggestions and online stories that is Anthony Joshua actually the problem here in negotiations. And the tipping point that sort of started to build that narrative even more, because Fury and Wilder obviously not in the same promotional stable, but the tipping point was Dillian Whyte, who said he's being lowballed, and Joshua clearly through his first offer didn't want the fight. And with that coming from his own stablemate, there has been a number of people starting to ask the question, well, is Joshua the one? Is he the problem here? Does he just want too much? Because if these fights don't get made, and we're down the track 2 or 3 years and we miss these opportunities, well, fans are going to turn around and blame someone. And a number of people are already looking at the guy who's always talking about money, which is Anthony Joshua, and saying that, you know, you're not going to get an equal split here. I'm the A side, and that money talk is starting to turn some people off. It is. We want to see these fights, but even Barry Hearn's been making it so overt that you're not going to get one more cent than we think you're worth. And if that's going to cost fights being made, well, we, the fans, are going to be the poorer for it. So Anthony Joshua's really got to actually start to be cognizant of this whole money greed situation that fans are starting to, some fans at least, not all, that is starting to take hold. So he's going to have to be aware of that, because if he is seen to be the problem with big fights not getting made consistently, regardless of whether he's the A side, the commercial A side, and deserves more than others, then more people will start to believe that actually he is the one that is the stumbling block. But as we know, with these fights with Anthony Joshua, everyone wants more than they're probably worth. But after all, they're prize fighters, of course. And with Deontay Wilder, he doesn't have to fight Anthony Joshua. He's got the leverage that, he's got the belt, and if Joshua wants it, he is going to get overpaid to fight Joshua. It's just a reality of the situation. But yeah, very interesting that Hearn said, look, and this is a sort of, I think, a counter to some of this talk that Joshua doesn't want it, that he is going to potentially reveal the offers that have made. He'd sit down with Kugan Cassius so the doubters can see what they've been offered. That's what he said. And people will say they are petrified of Joshua. And I think many of us have been wondering, what are these guys actually being offered? Because if it's, 40, 45%, you could kind of go, well, that's a decent offer. So who knows, maybe we will get to see that soon so we can consider what has been presented. And I know we all have different opinions on what is fair, but ultimately if the fights aren't getting made, that ends up being a problem too. And we get fights that potentially we don't want. I mean, this Dillian Whyte fight, it's the third option for most people in the queue of the fights they'd like to see Joshua in. But it is what it is, but 75% likely that Joshua will be fighting in April, and potentially with Dillian Whyte, we'll have to see an improved offer has been presented. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.